Have you ever looked at that tiny bottle of eye drops your vet gave your pet and wondered, what is actually in here? Well, it's definitely not just saline solution. It's a carefully chosen weapon from a super specialized toolkit. Today, we're going to pry open that toolkit and really understand the powerful drugs vets use to protect our pet's vision. So let's dive in. When it comes to your pet's eyes, the vet is usually fighting a battle on two different fronts. On one side, you've got inflammation. That's basically the body's own defense system going completely haywire, causing all that redness and pain. And on the other side, you've got infection. These are the outside invaders, bacteria trying to set up shop where they absolutely do not belong. And the whole game plan really depends on figuring out which enemy is the main problem. Or sometimes it's about fighting both at the same time. All right, so first up, let's talk about putting out that internal fire, the inflammation. This is where the real heavy hitters in the toolkit come out to play. And getting this under control isn't just about making your pet feel better, it is absolutely crucial to prevent permanent damage. So check this out. This really shows the fundamental choice a vet has to make. You've got two main options. In one corner, you have corticosteroids. These are the high-powered, big guns that just shut the whole inflammation process down. In the other corner, you have NSAIDs, which are, a bit more targeted, a little less powerful. But this choice isn't just about raw strength. It's this critical balancing act between power and risk. So what makes these corticosteroids pack such a wallop? Well, think of it this way. Instead of just snipping one little wire to stop a problem, they go straight to the main circuit breaker and shut the whole building down. They go right into the cell's nucleus and literally rewrite the instructions to stop the production of all the things that cause inflammation. It's a broad, powerful, and honestly a super effective way to stop swelling and pain in its tracks. But with that kind of power, you need incredible precision. The vet's choice of drug depends entirely on where that fire is burning. If it's just on the surface, something milder like hydrocortisone might be enough. But for a really deep fire, way inside the cornea, you need the big guns like prednisolone or dexamethasone that can actually get in there. And the dosing tells you how bad the fire is, right? A raging inferno needs drops every couple of hours, while a little smolder might only need them 2 or 3 times a day. Okay, so let's look at the other tool, the NSAIDs. If steroids are a sledgehammer, you can think of NSAIDs as more of a scalpel. They don't shut down the entire factory. Instead, they just target these two specific little enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, and block them. By doing that, they stop the production of prostaglandins, which are the main culprits that scream pain and inflammation to the body. It's a much more focused approach. So you might be asking, why use a scalpel when you have a sledgehammer? Well, because sometimes being precise is just safer. NSAIDs are the go-to when a steroid is way too risky, especially if there's a scratch or an ulcer on the eye. But, and this is a really big but, they are not risk-free. They can still slow down healing, and in rare cases, they've been linked to this really scary thing called a corneal melt, which is, as bad as it sounds. So even with the safer option, your vet is still watching things like a hawk. So we've been talking a lot about balancing power and risk, but there is one situation where the risk is so huge, the choice becomes an absolute, non-negotiable ironclad rule. Seriously, if you remember just one thing from our time together today, please make it this. So, I'm going to ask you point blank, what do you think is the single most important, can't break it no matter what rule when using these powerful eye drugs? There it is. Never, ever, under any circumstances, use a corticosteroid if there is a corneal ulcer, basically a scratch or a wound on the surface of the eye. This is not a friendly suggestion. It is a fundamental law of veterinary ophthalmology. And here's exactly why. Remember that awesome power to shut down inflammation? Well, it also shuts down healing. The source text says it inhibits reepithelialization, which is just a fancy way of saying it tells the eye to stop trying to heal the wound. And even worse, it suppresses the local immune system, which basically rolled out the red carpet for any bacteria hanging around. You're turning off the fire alarm and unlocking the front door for the burglars. It's a disaster. Okay, deep breath. That brings us to our second enemy, the invaders. So let's switch gears from fighting the body's own overreaction to fighting off actual bacteria. It's time to look at the antibiotic arsenal. So when a vet reaches for an antibiotic, they're really playing one of two games, defense or offense. The defensive move is called prophylactic. Think of it like putting guards up on the castle wall. The eye is already injured and vulnerable, so the antibiotic is there just to prevent an infection from even starting.
The offensive move is therapeutic. This is when the invaders are already inside the castle, and the antibiotic is there to actively fight and kill an infection that's already taken hold.
And picking the right antibiotic isn't just a guess. It's a really logical process, like a checklist your vet runs through. First up, are we playing defense or offense? Second, who are we fighting? Most of the time, it's the usual suspects, a group of bacteria called gram-positive. Third, can the weapon we choose actually get to the battlefield? And finally, what's the collateral damage? We have to consider all the potential side effects. So with that checklist in mind, what's usually the first line of defense? Well, it's typically a combination product, what we call a triple antibiotic. This stuff is the reliable, everyday workhorse for preventing eye infections. These ointments and drops are like a cocktail of different drugs that together cover a huge range of bacteria, both gram-positive and gram-negative. It's a great shotgun approach for prevention. But, and this is a huge one, especially if you're a cat person, these are almost never used in cats. Why? Because cats can have a very rare but life-threatening allergic reaction to one of the ingredients. It's the perfect example of why you can't just assume what's safe for a dog is safe for a cat.
All right, so after the workhorse, sometimes you need to call in the specialists, and that's where the aminoglycosides come in.
These drugs are like hired assassins for specific types of gram-negative bacteria, especially a really nasty one called Pseudomonas. But, you guessed it, there's always a trade-off. One of them, gentamicin, can be a little rough on the surface cells of the cornea and can sometimes even slow down healing. So the vet has to weigh the pros and cons. Kill the bat bug, but maybe heal a little slower.
And finally, for our last stop in the arsenal, we've got a class of drugs that's just really, really cool. They do more than just kill bacteria. Meet the multitaskers, the tetracyclines. These are especially handy in cats and for fighting tricky bacteria that like to hide inside our pet's own cells. But here's the magic trick. They also have these other special powers. They can help prevent that scary corneal melting we mentioned, and they've even been shown to speed up wound healing. So get this, it's an antibiotic that's fighting infection and helping the eye heal itself at the same time. How cool is that?
Whoa, okay, that was a lot of information, I know. From fighting internal fires to fighting off external invaders. So let's just take a second and boil it all down to the absolute essential things that every single pet owner should know.
Here are the three big ones. First, a vet's whole plan is about figuring out if they're fighting the fire of inflammation, the invaders of infection, or both. Second, the golden rule. I'm going to say it one more time. Never, ever use steroids on a scratched eye. And please, don't use old eye drops from a previous problem without asking your vet first. And third, not all antibiotics are created equal. The right choice is a very careful calculation that depends on the bug, the animal, and especially the species.
And that really brings us to the final thought. We've looked at all the individual tools in the kit, but a real-world eye problem is rarely just one thing. It's often an ulcer that's also super inflamed, or an infection in a cat that needs a specific antibiotic. And that's where the true art of veterinary medicine comes in. It's not just knowing about the tools, it's about knowing how to choose the perfect combination of drugs, at the exact right dose, for the exact right amount of time, for your specific pet.